So we talk about overwhelming and we talk about winning in March, which is a perfect segue into a little conversation about Memphis. I do think that we need to touch on them just a bit. I honestly think that they are the most fascinating team in college basketball this season. We have Emoni Bates. We have Jalen Duren. We have Penny Hardaway. We have Larry Brown. We have Rasheed Wallace. Like, there is just so much going on within that program, within that coaching staff. It's fascinating to me. So, Fanta, I'm going to tee you up with this first. What do you make of this Memphis team? Are you worried about some of the concerns we've seen with shooting, with some of the youth on the roster? And do you think this is the year that Penny can finally get this thing done?
Well, if he doesn't start to get it done this year, then it might not be meant to be. Look, former players coming back and taking on these positions at the college level, it's been a mixed bag and probably more negative than positive. But I do have my concerns about how exactly does this all mesh together. That being said, I think that it could be more feasible for it to come together because they play in a conference that's not one of the better conferences in college basketball. Like, I do think that Memphis is going to have more of an open door to get things together. The question is, when you play in that league, and Terrence alluded to this with Duke's pursuit for a regular season title. Like, for Duke, when they got it together in mid-January or late January, or if it's early February, right, when they did get it together and went on their run, those wins mattered. They mattered for NCAA tournament standing. You're going to make the tournament. You're taking off. Even the committee, I think, sometimes realized, hey, Duke was really young. We might have to change the way that we see them based on how much they were young and the fact that they're a very, very different team right now. The human element enters the equation for selection. For Memphis, they are the most fascinating team in college basketball heading into this season. And look, we're all rooting for this storyline to play out and be a good one in college basketball. It would be great for college basketball to have Penny Hardaway leading the Tigers back on the map nationally day in and day out. I have my question marks on game in, game out, that grind, managing the X's and O's, managing late game situations. And I do have my questions marks on the league that they play in. I don't know the strength of that conference. Sure, it's Houston, but I don't know the strength of the American. I mean, I don't right now. And I don't know if it carries the same value. If that team takes time to come along and then goes on their run in February, it doesn't carry the same weight as maybe other one and done programs are able to achieve. So are they going to be ready to go in November? Look, the talent's there. Bates is such a remarkable talent. But do I have my questions on whether this works? I'm kind of like you, Rob, with Shire. I am going to wait and see. I'll tell you what, though, I'm going to be watching, and we are all going to be watching because this is the most compelling storyline.
A lot of East Carolina slander coming out of John Fance's mouth right now. Terrence, where do you stand on these Memphis Tigers?
Well, I think it's interesting because they brought in 9 new bodies. I think that's the biggest portion of this whole thing. And they went out and got a point guard, but it's a guy that was there to begin with that had mediocre success at best, goes to Iowa State. He's like, oh, well, I mean, this isn't going to go great. I'm going to go back home. So he's never really won at a high level. It's a little bit the same as what happened the last 2 years. They've got supreme talent. Now, it's not number 1 and number 2 in the class of 2022, but at some point, you're going to have to put somebody on staff that can run your offense because defensively, Memphis has been really good over the past 2 years. Not just kind of good, top 5 in the country good.
They were the best defensive team in the country last year. Let's get that up there. They were the best defensive team in college basketball last season before they added Jalen Duren, before they added Emoni Bates. So they were great defensively. That's not the problem.
Yeah, and they had guys that could score, hypothetically. Lester Quiones, I'm a big fan of. You got Emoni Bates. He's going to help you on that end. Who's going to orchestrate all this stuff? Alex Lomax? Been mediocre. You going to put Emoni Bates at the point? I'm not sure I like that. He's wired one way. Now, he is a sweetheart of a kid. Let's just throw that out there. He's a great kid, and he will look to pass it, but then you're taking away what he does best.
Right.
Who's going to pick in place where these guys are going to be offensively is going to be the biggest thing for me. And I think Penny feels like you can throw Penny out there and still be good. Bottom line is you're going to have to set up some of these young guys to get into the spots where they're best. Jalen Duren, he's good. He's a physical animal, but or physical animal is the wrong word, physical specimen. but like he's not an offensive juggernaut. He's not somebody that's going to step out and do a ton of stuff. Now he's good, but he's not. He's going to have to go in that overwhelming factor. You're going to have to put guys in the right spot to score. They're excellent defensively. It's time for them to make the tournament. He's not on the hot seat. Penny's not on the hot seat. We got to have something to talk about, but Penny's not going anywhere. Penny is Memphis. Penny is Memphis. He's not going anywhere. But he needs to put his guys in a spot to score, and they just haven't been able to do it despite having top 5 recruiting classes in the country every year since he's been there.
Yeah, I don't think that he's on the hot seat, but I do think this is kind of the shit or get off the pot season for Penny, right? Like, look, you look at the last couple seasons, there have always been, I don't even want to say excuses. There have been legitimate reasons for them to have some of the struggles that they've had. He hasn't been to a tournament yet. First year he got there, didn't have the talent that you would expect. That was Tubby Smith's roster, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Second year he got there. James Wiseman leaves after 3 games. DJ Jeffries tears up his knee, misses the rest of the season. You lose 2 of your top 3 players, right? Mm-hmm. What are you going to do? There's not much you can do. How many teams in the country could lose 2 of their top 3 players, play in the American Athletic Conference, and put together a resume that's going to be good enough to get you to go to the NCAA tournament, right? The year after that, they lost a couple games early. They were young. They took off down the stretch. In my mind, they were probably a top 30 team in college basketball last year. They played in the American Athletic Conference. They couldn't put together the resume. Yep. If one of those games against Houston in the last couple weeks of the season goes a different way, they were 1 possession losses. If they win one of those 2 games, they make the tournament. So I think that there are legitimate reasons why Penny is in the position that he's in. I don't even want to call them excuses. There is no legitimate excuse for not getting this team to the tournament. He has the talent. He's got to be able to find a way to figure it out. The point guard issue is a big one, right? I don't think Emoni is going to be that guy. I don't know who else it is. Jalen Duren, like Terrence, we talked about this for 5 straight days at Peach Jam. Is his motor going to be running hot the whole year? That's the biggest question. Where's the shooting going to come from? How are you going to be able to get, they probably have a rotation of 11 guys. How are you going to be able to get all of these dudes the minutes that they're going to need to be able to stay engaged, right? What happens if you decide that you're going to have to bench one of Landers Nolly or Lester Quinones? Are you going to be able to have the shooting on the floor that will create the space to make all of this stuff effective? There are a lot of really, really good pieces. Putting these pieces together, to me, is the big question. Now, the one last point that I want to make, and then I'll let you guys go, is that I actually think that this is the perfect spot for both Emoni and Jalen in terms of their long-term development, right? Emoni wants to be able to be a guy that kind of develops on the defensive end, that develops some of his passing game and plays more of a point guard. Who better to learn from for that than Penny Hardaway, right? Jalen Duren, his big issue, consistency of effort. Who better to help you develop that than getting cussed out by Rasheed Wallace and Larry Brown every time you take a possession off? Every day in practice, every single game. So I do think that this is a great spot for both of those kids in terms of their long-term development. I have questions about how all of these pieces are going to fit together. And I hope that people kind of set the expectation for this team as like, you get out of the first weekend, you get to the round of 16. That is a successful season for a team that's going to be headlined by 2 kids that are supposed to be seniors in high school, instead of saying it's national title or bust.
Yes.
Can I throw one thing in there when it comes to the American? Sorry, John. I'm sorry. We talk a little bit about Duke and Kentucky and how they've gotten older. The American Conference is a bunch of guys that have old teams. You look at Houston, you look at Wichita State, even though they've had some issues. There are a bunch of old dudes out there in the fields in Kansas, wherever the hell they are. SMU has a bunch of old guys. UCF, they've done a nice job in the past few years. They're really talented. Got the kid from Oregon that transferred down. They have a lot of bodies. Cincinnati, now with Wes Miller, they have some old guys, including some transfers from the ACC. Odi Oguama, John Newman, they've got bodies. They've got old bodies. They won 11 out of their last 13. Here's the problem with doing stuff like that. You have to find ways to win in December and January for your resume to be strong enough. And they won the NIT, and they were a tournament team talent-wise. I don't think anybody would argue that. I just feel like you got to find ways in a conference that's considered subpar by some. You got to find ways to win games early, even though you're young.
Yeah, and I look at their non-conference schedule, starting to just take a deeper dive on that, and I think they ease in well. Tennessee Tech, North Carolina Central. I'm okay with that. Like, that's what I would want if I were Penny Hardaway for this team, for this particular team. I don't want to take this team to Madison Square Garden for a Champions Classic or something like that in the first week of the season. So, that for me, keeping a lower profile in that first week's probably okay. They have St. Louis at home. They have Western Kentucky at home. Quality tests leading into – then you have that NIT. That NIT season tip-off for Memphis is going to be a first measuring stick, and it's against quality competition. The NIT has lost its luster from its heyday, but look, these big-time names coming to Brooklyn. You're going to have Virginia Tech. Virginia Tech's a team that I think is kind of getting slept on in the ACC a little bit heading into this year. They're really well coached.